This week we're creating miniature paper Easter baskets. These are the perfect size to hold an Easter egg and they fit in the palm of your hand. To create these baskets, you won't need to print any patterns, you'll just need to cut paper to the following sizes. You'll need one piece that is 7.5 inches wide by 2 inches tall. Next, you'll need to cut 2 strips of paper that are both 7.5 inches long by 1/2 inch tall. Next, you'll need to cut 3 strips that are 3.5 inches by 1/2 inch. And lastly, you'll need to cut one piece that will be the handle. It needs to be 7 inches long by 1/2 inch tall. For this next step, it will be really helpful if you have a cutting mat that has a grid on it like mine. This will help you measure out the slits that we're going to cut in this piece of paper. You can still do this if you don't have the cutting mat, you'll just need to measure everything out. So I'm going to line this up really well on the grid. Then I'm going to take a ruler and an X-Acto knife. And then I'll be cutting a vertical slit in this paper every 1/2 inch. So I'm just going to use the grid of this mat to help me measure them out. Halfway between one of these big squares is 1/2 inch. So I'm going to start at the left side here, and I'll line up the ruler with this line on both sides of the paper. And I'll be cutting from just under 1/2 inch from the top to just over 1/2 inch from the bottom, if that makes sense. So you want to cut it over that just a little bit so the pieces will slide in easier. So I'm going to line up the one with the top of the paper to help guide me, and I'll just cut from 1/2 inch at the top to 1/2 inch at the bottom. And it looks like that. Then I'll move over 1/2 inch from that line, and I'll repeat the same thing. Line up the ruler on the one mark so I can see exactly where 1/2 inch from the top is, and then cut just slightly over that down to 1/2 inch from the bottom. Then move it over another 1/2 inch and repeat the same process. And then move it over another 1/2 inch. And you'll just be repeating this process all across the paper. You'll end up 1/2 inch from the end. And if you want to make a slightly easier version of this, you can also cut slits every 1 inch instead. This will also make it easier to weave in the paper strips. So when I finished cutting the slits, the paper looked like this. So now we're ready to weave in the strips. So I'm starting with this pink strip of paper, and I'm just going to start weaving it into these slits, following a pattern of going over and under. And it's actually a bit easier to weave these in if you use thinner paper. I used cardstock, so it got a little tricky at times. You'll just need to be patient and slowly and gently push the paper through. And it actually does seem to be easier to wiggle the paper side to side rather than just trying to push it. It seems to move better that way. So just keep pushing it until it's even with the edge of the paper, and then push it down as far as you can to make room for the other strip. So now we're ready to weave in the second strip. So this time I'm going to follow the opposite pattern that I did with the first strip. So I'm going to do under over instead of over under. And this second strip is a little harder to weave in. Again, it just works best if you weave it in slowly and carefully and wiggle it side to side. And try not to tear the paper as you're sliding this in, but that's okay if you do. Mine did a couple times and I just fixed it with some hot glue at the end. So just keep working on it until you get it all the way to the end. And again, you'll want to line it up with the edges of the paper. Then move things around and make any adjustments you'd like to. And when you're ready, we're going to just glue these ends down. So I'm just going to lift that up and put a little hot glue and press that in place. And I'll repeat that on all of the ends. So it should look like this. Next, you can fix any little tears on the back side of the basket with some hot glue. And then once you're done with that, we're ready to assemble the basket. So I'm just going to be taking these two ends and we'll be gluing these together, just overlapping them each by 1/2 inch, just like that. So I'm just going to put some glue here on this end and then press the other end in place, overlapping them. So it looks like this. Next, I'm going to add the handle to the basket, so that's that 7-inch long piece. So you just want to put it halfway across the basket, so just decide exactly where you want to place it. And I'm going to put it above the square right here, so I'm putting some glue right there, and then just gluing the end of the strip in place. Then I'll decide where I want the other one to be, just right above this square. So I'll put a little glue right there, and then glue that end in place. And you may need to add a little more glue just to make sure it's really secure. So the basket looks like this at this point. Now we just need to create a bottom for it. So I took those 3.5 inch strips, and I'm just going to be adding those to the bottom of the basket. So I'm just going to fold like a 1/2 inch on the end like that. And this will need to be placed at the halfway point across the bottom. So right there like that. So I'm going to take that off and put some glue on that end. And if you have a spot that's torn on the basket, this is a good way to reinforce it, so you can place it right there. Just glue that in place. And you can just try eyeballing the other end and folding it, but this is a little tough to get it just the right length. As you can see, that's a little too long. So I found it's easiest just to hold it and then mark it with a pencil and then make a new fold there. So I want it to go right here. So I'm just going to take that end up and put some glue on it and press it in place. Then I'm going to add the next strip, and we'll be adding these in kind of like a snowflake shape. So I'll be adding this one right there, putting some glue on the end and gluing it in place. And then I folded the other end. I marked it with a pencil first, just like on the other one, and then glued that in place. And then finally this last piece, so folding the end and gluing it in place, just repeating the same process. Marking and folding the other end. You can cut off the extra paper and then glue it in place. So it looks like this on the bottom. You can add a little more glue here if you really want it to be secure, but you don't have to do that. And that's it! Here is the finished miniature Easter basket. These look really cute when you fill them with paper Easter grass. I hope you enjoyed this miniature paper Easter basket tutorial. Thank you so much for watching. If you're interested in seeing more Easter videos from my channel, I will put those on screen, and please subscribe if you'd like to see future videos. Thank you so much, and I hope you have a great Easter.